Hello true believers, Justin here to review the Japanese version of Spider-Man. For hundreds of years, Professor Monster, the leader of the Westboro Baptist Church, the Iron Cross Army, sorry, get those two confused all the time, has been conquering the galaxy. 400 years after destroying the planet Spider, he and his army emerge on Earth with the intent of conquering. Onto their plans is a meteor expert, Dr. Yamashita. They manage to kill him. Going after him, the professor's son Takuya is injured and falls into a cave. There, Takuya is saved by the blood of the last son of the planet Spider, Gadia. Now Takuya, thanks to the blood of Gadia, becomes Spider-Man and is given enhanced abilities, a costume, a car, and a giant robot to stop this menace, while at the same time keep his identity a secret from his loved ones and this evil cult. Well, this is, of course, naturally not the Spider-Man we all grew up with if you're not, Japanese or grew up in Japan. And this is not at all related to the Spider-Man manga by Ikegami Ryoichi. Because of that, I need to say this from the get-go that this series will not be for everyone. We all have these expectations of what Spider-Man is because of how we grew up with the character, and naturally, this version takes numerous liberties within both the confines of the character and the genre of Tokusatsu. I can't encourage you to watch this with an open mind because I hate using terms and phrases like open-minded or closed-minded, but I do think if you're interested in Tokusatsu or something different just for the sake that it is different, then yes, then maybe this version of Spider-Man might be the one for you. I don't know. But anyway, if you feel it's not for you, then hey, that's cool. And as you watch it, it will present some elements that do, pay some form of homage to the original source material. Granted, this Spider-Man series lacks some of the qualities that makes the character appealing to me and many other Spider-Man fans, but I think as a Tokusatsu series, it is something that is still distinct in its own way. Spider-Man in this version is not fighting common criminals or the Green Goblin, but is a lone soldier against an army, but he will have help from Interpol in every other episode. The thing that I feel that he lacks is that of Takuya. He isn't someone that easily, able to relate to on a personal level. Such as, paying rent, getting through high school and college, everyday problems some people have to deal with. That is sort of touched upon, but, not to the great writing of Stan Lee's, but in a way, the characters in the show can relate to him, and he can relate to the people he helps with within the context of the story. He may not be that relatable, but, there are ways to find the character engaging in his own kind of way. The series does follow a single story in which Takuya is out to defeat the Iron Cross Army, but it is told in, an episodic format, and, it tends to be formulaic, such as the Iron Cross Army will target someone like some scientist for their invention and threaten their family and all that. Another interesting thing that this series touches upon on virtually, 99% of the time is that this series it touches upon parental loss and being orphaned. It does give Takuya motivation since he can relate to that since his mother died prior to the series and his father was killed by the Iron Cross Army. At times the theme does feel very repetitive, but it also shows how cruel the Iron Cross Army can be and how their actions can negatively affect innocent people such as children. About 3 out of 5 episodes will not have a happy ending because of this, but yet it still shows that we have to never give up and to always have hope. Takuya may not be as nerdy or as intelligent as Peter Parker, and hell, he does have some athletic ability since he's a motocross racer, but he does believe in what is right and does show some cleverness and intuition. Of course, he has to conceal that he is Spider-Man by pretending he is not a fighter and apathetic to the situation. The Iron Cross Army as villains are pretty much villains you would find in any other Tokusatsu series, and are appropriately gimmicky in terms of the Tokusatsu genre. Professor Monster as the leader, but, Amazonas is always on the field and carrying out the operations. The actress has this expression in her eyes and in her face that makes her really scary and intimidating. She can be cruel and manipulative as well. Professor Monster shows that he has no regards to any form of life whatsoever. So they are villains that just work for the sake of what they are. They didn't have the same depth to them as the Viren from Jetman or the Gorgon from Kamen Rider Black, but they are bad enough to hate because of how their actions affect the innocent bystanders. As for the ending, it just ends for the sake that it has to end. It really has no proper build-up and everything just feels forced, and I felt that certain aspects could have been resolved more effectively. I felt that the episodic nature played part of this, and I felt the ending could have been a two-parter or maybe a three-parter. But anyway, I would elaborate more, but those would have to give out spoilers. So I give the story and characters a 7 out of 10. The choreography of the action does a great job in paying homage to the original comics. The way Spidey fights in this one is very similar to how he fights in the comics, though there are no CGI to make him much more fast or agile. Without all those special effects to accurately capture the action, the choreography is still great. He moves more like a gymnast as opposed to a technical martial artist or a brawler, like how you would see in Kamen Rider or Sentai. His poses and how he widens his stance is very similar to how the comics does it, and it's pretty awesome. At least in context to the original source material, his movements are very accurate. And the old Christopher Reeve Superman tagline that says, "You will believe a man can fly"? Of course, with this one, you won't see a lot of web slinging across Tokyo, but this series does a decent job of showing Spider-Man scaling walls like a spider, and with decent speed. So when you see this series, you will believe that a man can crawl walls. Of course, it will look floaty at times, but it does look pretty cool to see a man in that costume to scale walls like that. In the fights, he will use more open-handed strikes as opposed to punching. He also has a web and all that. He does have his spider sense, but it works differently as opposed to the original creation. Instead of sensing impending danger, he senses there is danger somewhere, and it works more like a distinct kind of radar as opposed to precognition. Also, you will never see Takuya fight out of costume. The Iron Cross Army does not know who he is, and whenever he's in confrontation, especially with loved ones around, he has to act weaker so not to reveal his identity. I really am more attracted to series in which the character can demonstrate fighting ability outside of their costume or armor. It shows how strong they are, but with this one, they can't really do that since I can, understand why. And in place of the web slinging, Spider-Man gets a car and a robot. Supposedly, him having a giant robot paved way for other Super Sentai teams having their own robots to fight monsters when they go all gigantic. Yes, it is out of whack, but it is Tokusatsu history, and, there is good reason, and it shows how and why Spider-Man has the robot. The giant fighting isn't really that exciting and tends to be short. Spider-Man just throws a sword and it's done. It's not as elaborate as, let's say, the mech fights in Jew-Ranger or Die-Ranger, but the robot does have some cool features. The designs of the monsters in the first 5 episodes will be a little repetitive, but as the series progresses, it will get better and more diverse, and more visually diverse, and each being a distinct threat to Spider-Man and the planet Earth. So I give the action an 8 out of 10. The music, of course, will have some funk and disco tracks. It does appropriately reflect the times, and I do listen to a lot of music from that area anyway, and yes, I do get a kick out of 1970s porn music. Of course, it will use some of the old Enka style in the ending theme to bring a more emotional atmosphere. Well, let's just say that the music doesn't match the funk that the American 1970s Spider-Man theme song pumps out, that makes you want to shake your booty like you got the Saturday Night Fever, and bang your chick like you're John Holmes, but, there is this one episode where the Iron Cross Army manipulates Spider-Man to a headache frenzy with music to a certain frequency. With today's artists such as Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, and Lil Wayne, they could just naturally do that with any scientific advancements or hocus pocus. If I were a superhero, shitty music would be my kryptonite. So I leave the music at another 8 out of 10. Well, this series, as someone with both familiar to Spider-Man and now trying to still familiarize myself with Tokusatsu, I understand that Stan Lee made the character in mind that anybody of any ethnic background can imagine themselves inside the costume, and the Japanese, understand and took liberties with that. The costume for the most part is still the costume except with a wrist gadget that works like the Flash's ring and to see through illusions and to shoot web.
as the Spidey character, I do feel it is Spidey, but the man under the mask, it just doesn't feel the same. I like the fact that he was smart and an unathletic nerd. It adds more to his character in my humble opinion, but Takio as the series progresses does bring his own flavor, but does not feel the same. And I do enjoy it for what it is, and I do like it artistically. And for that, I give it a score of a 7.5 out of 10, and check it out at marvel.com. And thank you for watching.